It is the Matt Barrie Show here on the ESPN College Football YouTube channel. I am joined now, as I always am, by Paul Finebaum, who is, I've been told, despite what the backdrop looks like, he is safe. He has not been taken captive by
Matt,
Sankey.
I don't know. You were too young, but when I was a kid, we'd go down to the drugstore, and they'd have like a thing that would take 4 pictures of you and your friends, and we'd all
Yeah.
kind of. And this is how I feel because I haven't had a backdrop like this since I was 8 years old in a drugstore.
That is an amazing photo booth they set up for you there in Nashville. And I also promise people watching on the YouTube channel, this is the dressiest Finebaum and I'll get the entire season. He's at SEC Media Days. He's got stuff going on. I got Sports Center, got a couple of hours. So we're dressed in our adult clothes for our day jobs. We did want to catch up with you, Paul, while you've been down there. I guess big picture, we've embarked on the final day. Today, Shane Beamer, Josh Heupel, and Lane Kiffin. But leading up to this point in the final day, what has been the biggest, in your estimation, storyline coming out of Nashville this week?
It's really about Kirby Smart, number one, dealing with the off-the-field issues. And I want to get to that in a minute because there was a dramatic turn yesterday and some of that. And ultimately, the quest for the three-peat. And Matt, the sideshow, believe it or not, was Nick Saban. He did not command the stage like he normally does. It seemed awkward. Nobody really wanted to say, "Hey, coach, do you really think Georgia has passed you?" But beyond that, this has been, and again, there's 3 more coaches, including Kiffin, so you don't want to speak too soon. It's been a fairly routine SEC media days.
Yeah, okay, and there are bullet points I want to get to with a couple of things you just said. Let's start with Nick Saban first and foremost. Is he at the point? I had him on SportsCenter with me. You talk with him all the time. He had the podium yesterday. Is Saban at the point? He's been in Alabama now for 17 years. Is he at the point now where it's, hey man, I'm going to come here and I'm going to do my thing. I'm going to speak at the podium. We're not going to get anything inflammatory out of me. The biggest thing that went around is him making an analogy to his grandma's cake and the carrot cake. Yeah. I mean, is it just kind of where he is at this point of his career where he's like, man, I don't need to come here. Just let's go.
Yeah. I mean, I think in reality, he probably would have preferred skipping it. I mean, Matt, I mean, that you get really stupid questions from the media. One guy got up there, and I'm going to quote it verbatim. He said, "Coach, don't laugh. My name is Johnny Ballpark Franks. I'm from Huntsville, Alabama, and I just wanted to congratulate you on setting the record for the longest tenured coach at a certain specific school, 17 years or 16 years, appearing at media days." And I'm thinking, Saban, we all know 7 national championships, great.
Right.
And I'm sure Saban was, ready to call Miss Terry and go, "Hey, guess what? I've accomplished something else." I mean, it was so absurd. And that really what it was all about. I mean, Saban talk about situational awareness. He started talking about celebrating his 52nd because of COVID, the wedding anniversary, a 3-week tour of Italy. And he said, "Let me tell you, Florence." I mean, we're not talking about 2 days in Rome. You get part of a package, 4 nights in Europe for $900. He said, Florence, Milan. He said we went to the Ferrari factory. The word is that he's about to become a Ferrari dealer, and you have to go there and test drive. He's talking about test driving Ferraris, and then he said, "All of you folks out, you really should go there." I'm like going, I mean, we got everybody knows the media business right now. Saban's encouraging a bunch of sports writers hanging on for their life. Go ahead and why don't you go ahead and consider taking your wife to Florence for 3 or 4 weeks when you get a break. I mean, it was just so. I mean, it was tone deaf on one level. It was hilarious on the other. That was the most interesting thing he said. Is my point.
I find him, Paul, where he doesn't. He's going to do it in the regular season. He's going to come out with that Coke bottle he never drinks from on the podium. Right. He's going to get after the media for not talking good about him, and then he'll get after the media for talking too good about him. At this point in his career, to me, he's just up there playing possum. Like, listen, I've got a talented team. I'm going to pick a quarterback. We're going to win a lot of football games. You can say what you want about Kirby Smart. You can do that, but I think he's so secure in what he's done. He just doesn't care what people think anymore.
Well, he doesn't care until somebody criticizes him, which happens very rarely. But that's for another podcast. But yeah, I mean, there's a routineness to it that he knows he's got everything in his back pocket. And I mean, he still is charming. I mean, you talk to him, he can have fun, and I think he likes to have fun. He always says the same thing at the end. I want to thank all of you for what a great job. I mean, there's not one guy in that room that's ever met Nick Saban, Matt. I kid you not. I mean, I ask Alabama beat reporters all the time, and there's like 400 of them. Oh, what about what is your relationship with Nick Saban? Well, I've never met her. They say it. Let's be honest. Saban doesn't care about the local guys. I mean, he talks to you. He talks to Herbie. Van Pelt. I mean, he is not remotely interested in the local media. What are they going to do for him? So, but he thanks them anyway for everything they do for college football.
And I always call it the State of the Alabama address because that's really what it is. He gets up there, he dictates the talking points. But Paul, I would bet if you got him in a room, not as creepy as the one you're in right now, but just a room in general.
By the way, there is a dead body behind this couch.
If you got him in a room or you were talking to, I bet it does eat at him a little bit, the success of a former assistant in Kirby Smart. That this isn't just, hey, successful coaching career. This is a guy now who's won back-to-back national championships, kings of college football, kings of SEC. And oh, by the way, one of those championships was done over Alabama in the CFP.
Yeah. And, I think Saban was the last person to beat Kirby Smart in what truly was an insignificant win as things go, because all it did was give Nick Saban a chance to lose to Kirby Smart again 3 weeks later and get this thing started. So I think it's an issue, and I do think Nick Saban will address it. I mean, you'll see sit downs with Saban where he's a little more relaxed, and you can't avoid that question. And he'll say all this. Oh, I'm so happy for Kirby. We love Kirby, but yeah, I mean, we're talking about something now that if Kirby Smart accomplishes it, Nick Saban didn't accomplish, and I mean, Matt, winning 2 championships is great. Not that many people have done it. Winning three in a row. I mean, you cover golf. I mean, there are a lot of guys, at Top Golf right now who have a major championship. There aren't too many that have two or three or 4 or 5. Right. I mean, it really changes once you get that second one, and if you get a third one in a row. And the debate is on, and it's not really relevant, but I mean, but Kirby Smart has really taken what Saban did so well, and the thing that I think is gnawing at Nick Saban more than anything is that Kirby Smart's program in Athens looks a lot more like Alabama right now than Nick Saban's program.
Yeah, and you bring up the multiple national championships. I mean, think about the rarefied air Kirby's already in. I mean, Urban Meyer has 2. He's got 1 at Florida, or he's got 3. Does Urban have 3? 2 at Florida, 1 at Ohio State. 3. So he's got 3.
Have a lot more, by the way.
Yeah. Steve Spurrier's only got the 1 at Florida. I mean, Bob Stoops only has the 1 at Oklahoma. Yeah. I mean, these are guys that we regard as coaching legends that Kirby Smart has already caught. And you're right. 3 in a row is unprecedented. And it would put him in a whole other rarefied air. As we switch now to Georgia and Kirby Smart. On the field, we know they're going to be good. It's been the off-the-field stuff this offseason. We had waited to find out what Kirby was going to say about the off-the-field incidents. I want to start there with his response to the traffic violations and how he handled that, and then we'll move to the big news that came out yesterday.
I thought he handled it fairly well. He's had a lot of practice at it because he did it a week or 2 ago in Georgia. And, I mean, he has a great tone. I mean, Kirby Smart isn't a flashy guy up there, but he's got it down, and I think he addressed it, but I think he was also relieved when he got on the plane to go back that will probably be the last time he talks about it, because there's not much more he can say. And the second part of the story really plays into the first part, Matt, and I'll get out of your way as you tell that story.
Yeah, so the Atlanta Journal-Constitution has been covering Georgia football off the field at great length, and there's been a couple of stories that have come out that even ESPN did a video piece on it outside the lines. That was, in fact, about the traffic violations, and the Atlanta Journal-Constitution really dug into those. But then there was another story that they put out there about sexual assault allegations against Georgia and the football program. And it was after that story that Georgia came out and demanded a retraction from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. And all of us were thinking, wow, I mean, they're really digging in on this, that this story is incorrect. We would like a retraction. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution then comes out yesterday. Not only do they make corrections within that story involving the sexual assault allegations, they fired the reporter who did the story because of their journalistic integrity that they tried to maintain at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. And Paul, we saw this. I was like, whoa, chalk one up for Georgia for looking at this particular writer and this particular piece and saying, man, this is close to slander and this is incorrect.
Yeah, and regardless of the minutia, the perception of this moving forward is that Kirby Smart was right, that he was vilified. And it bothered me early on, Matt, when people were attacking the messenger. But now it's so clear that this publication was irresponsible. And this is not for this podcast, but media wonks, guys that used to be in the business now that are teach journalism. I mean, they'll be having conversations about this for a long time, because this was a shattering blow to the media, and for those who try to do investigative reporting, which is very difficult to do. And I was once in that platform and am no longer. But I mean, the dirt road fan won. I mean, that guy who posts on Dog Nation and hairy dogs and all that. I mean, they just beat the media down with a stick on this one, and it will change it will be a paradigm shift, because the next time some publication comes out like this, they'll be like, well, they think they got it right.
There you go. And that's the biggest thing. And I'm glad you brought it up in that manner, because when I looked at this, and look, this isn't, I don't think either of us are like this. We tend to evaluate everything as it comes. I'm not Mr. Media. The media is always right. I know the media has several faults. And so I looked at this and I said, oh no, like their fans are going to attack and attack and attacks. And I'll say that publication in Atlanta, they've been really big on what Georgia's doing off the field. They lost, in my mind, all credibility with any kind of reporting they want to do on this going forward. I think it's done for them in terms of like, well, why should we listen? How do we even know that's true? You just fired a reporter that made stuff up.
Yeah, the AJC is finished when it comes to covering the dogs. Nobody's going to trust them. Nobody cares what they have to say. And by the way, they did all this behind a paywall. Just to make it even more untenable. Here's the kicker, though, Matt. There were some rumors out there this week about the reporter Alan Judd, and I interviewed him a couple weeks ago, and he answered the questions, whatever. I tended not to get too carried away when I saw a reporter being vilified online.
Yeah,
I'm interviewing Pat Forty yesterday. I mean, Pat Forty is a respected investigative journalist. He's a columnist for Sports Illustrated. I said, Pat, what about it? He said, well, Paul, he said, I'm not really that surprised. I go, why not? He said, I worked with this guy 30 years ago at the Louisville Courier-Journal, and he got run out of there for doing the same thing. And I'm like going, oh, my goodness. And listen, everybody makes mistakes. But investigative reporting is different than just popping off like we're doing here. I've done it. I mean, it is. And the problem is, and I'll sound like that old guy who used to, the ink stained wretch, but Matt, there's just these organizations aren't cut out for it anymore. There's not enough checks and balances, and the AJC has egg all over its face, and they'll never get it off.
And you can hoist another trophy for Kirby Smart in the victory column, because he and the program got that with the retraction yesterday. All right, my favorite thing about SEC Media Days to this point, and we know you got to run, is
I'm good.
The Jimbo Fisher Bobby Petrino marriage. Paul, why couldn't Jimbo go up there and answer the question? Our intent is for Bobby to call the game on offense. Instead, he kind of danced around it, says, well, I hope he's able to call the game. We don't know. Why do that? Was he marking his territory? Like, why do that now? What's the point?
Well, because he's heard all this chatter, and I just think he came there with an attitude. And what's really funny, Matt, he did that interview, and then the network, the SEC network, goes off the air, so he's obligated, I guess, to do one more with the network. So he comes up with me, and I had not heard what he had said, because I was doing something else. I don't know. I was interviewing somebody else, and I'm just trying to go about it. I mean, it's so awkward talking to him, and he's talking a mile a minute. I didn't even realize he had said it, because one of the Texas Ag guys came up to me afterwards and said, I can't believe he admitted on your show that Bobby Petrino was calling the plays. And I think he slipped up. He was like rambling on about the marriage, and he said it, and you can't understand Jimbo anyway. So I missed it. But he just cannot relax. But I after all this, which has nothing to do with the football field, I got the distinct impression that he feels really good about this situation. And he doesn't care about the $75 million buyout. And why should he? I mean, would you care if you had a $75 million buyout?
No. Yeah. Here's what we know, Paul, and this is why it's going to be fascinating to watch. Texas A&M's loaded with 5-star talent, 4 and 5-star talent. We know that. We also know that Jimbo Fisher's got a good offensive mind. We also know Bobby Petrino's got a good offensive mind. We also know both of them are combustible, as a lot of coaches are. But if this works, if the marriage works and they find a way to coexist, Texas A&M you can add them to a list of loaded teams in the West, because it's not a talent issue. It's never been a talent issue. It's been about, can you harness that talent and win on Saturdays? And I applauded Jimbo for making this hire to begin with. People forget that Petrino had just accepted a job at UNLV at the same position. He had a cup of coffee at the craps table and was out. So,
yeah, I mean, Petrino's a punchline because of the Harley incident at Arkansas. But he coached Lamar Jackson 12 years ago. He was the second best coach in the SEC behind Saban. He was rolling, and he just it doesn't matter anymore that he's a bad guy or he's doesn't care about. I mean, listen, there are a lot of bad guys in every sport, but he is going to help that program. They have a good quarterback in Connor Wegman. He's very capable. They got stars across the board, and I think they're going to have a seriously good year. And I wish Jimbo could handle the media better, but he's not going to. He's still angry. I don't know what he's angry about, but that's just who he is. And he told me, I'm from West Virginia. My dad was a coal miner, got hurt. That's who we are. Oh, good, wonderful. Congratulations, Jimbo. You're almost 60 years old. Grow up.
Where does Lane Kiffin have Ole Miss now, entering his 4th year?
They're in a good spot. They have 4 quarterbacks and one of the best running backs in the country. But it's just such a hard lane to get out of, because they're kind of in that middle of the SEC West, and they have to play all those other schools. And he got the big contract. I'm sure he's happy with that. But at some point, Lane beat somebody, and he just has not done that very well.
You mentioned the quarterbacks. I mean, Spencer Sanders transfers in from Oklahoma State. Jackson Dart is back after he transferred in from USC. Will Howard, he was an all everything recruit for LSU, and Brian Kelly transferred in. They got another young quarterback. I mean, the quarterback room, you could argue, is the best in the country. I don't know how he's going to keep all of them, but we'll find out if Lane Kiffin's got that magic. Quinshon Judkins, as you mentioned, a record-setting freshman year. He seems to me to have everything he needs to surprise a lot of people in the SEC West this year. But you look at that schedule after the first 3 games at Alabama, home against LSU and Arkansas, and then at Auburn. It's like, Lane, who did you piss off in the league office to get a stretch of that for? And that's it right there for me. It's not a talent thing with Lane and Ole Miss, because I think they stack up as good as anybody in the SEC. It's the gauntlet they're going to have to get through towards the end of September and early October.
Yeah, and he's got an utterly bizarre road game early at Tulane, which I know people going, I know Tulane is not the same this year as they were in the bowl game, but still, I mean, that's like a weird one. And I don't know how he navigates the schedule. So that's why I'm probably not as high on Ole Miss. But yeah, all they have to do is upset somebody. But that's the problem Lane has had. Sometimes he gets in his own way, and he did that last year.
It's getting over the hump too. You know, it's being as good as you can be talent-wise with everybody else and hanging on the field with everybody else. And then it's getting over the hump and having that really special season that puts you in Atlanta with the SEC championship. You lost the Egg Bowl last year and what ended up being Mike Leach's final game. Look, Lane is good for football. Lane is good for the SEC. He's good for social media. The back and forth that he has with other coaches. You just add him to another talented group of teams in the West, but in the Georgia and everybody else. Billy Napier was there yesterday. He's still building that thing. The team I want to talk about in Tennessee and Josh Heupel in a hiring that was widely panned. The locals hated it. Now he's the greatest coach ever. And he's got to do it with Joe Milton this year. Is it possible Tennessee, who, by the way, was number 1 for a couple of weeks in the college football playoff rankings a year ago, is it possible for Tennessee to stay at that level that we saw a year ago?
Yes. And Milton, I think, is capable of doing great things. Hendon Hooker was a transfer from Virginia Tech, and he almost won the Heisman. Had he not gotten hurt, he wouldn't have won, but he would have been in the top 3. Tennessee has it going. All of a sudden, it just clicked at Tennessee, and I think Heupel is a genius when it comes to offensive plays. They've got a lot of good compliments on that program, and this is not because I went to school there. That's irrelevant to the conversation, but we forget that Tennessee has always been a major power in college football, but they just fallen so far off the stage. So it's not as difficult for Tennessee to suddenly get everything clicking because they have the infrastructure there. And now they're starting to make tremendous inroads on the recruiting trail. They need to follow it up, though. You don't need to go from a record-breaking year and a huge bowl win and slip back to 8-4. But I don't think they will. will.
I don't either.
And they've got Georgia at the end of the season, Matt, which is the biggest, one of the biggest games of the year in the SEC.
Yeah, it's like everybody could come out with one hit song or one hit album.
Sure.
It's how you follow that hit song and that hit album up. And I believe when you look at the landscape of this conference, and I'll even make this comment big picture in the country, I believe that Joe Milton is the most dangerous unknown in the country. Here's why. If you look at him as an athlete and you look at his arm as a quarterback, it's first overall pick, first round pick type talent.
Yeah. I mean, he can throw the ball 100 yards.
But he overthrows guys a lot. If him being patient and waiting his turn behind Hendon Hooker, if he legitimately harnessed the time, the film, and the improvement, he could easily be the Heisman Trophy winner, and he could easily be a top 10 pick in the NFL. I find him so fascinating and frightening because everything's there. And if Heupel finds a way to get it out of him, look out, because he, to me, could be the most dangerous quarterback in the country if he's had it figured out.
I agree. And, Tennessee, misfortune, of course, of having to play Georgia and Alabama. They have a tricky game early, Matt, against Florida. They get the all-time break with the non-conference game. They're the first game against Virginia. I mean, they could win that game by 30 or 40 points. But I do think Florida will be a little bit uneasy because there's so much history there. The great Fulmer Spurrier days of the 90s,
right.
and last year, even beating Florida, as bad as they turned out to be, was cathartic for Tennessee to finally get over that hump. And they're feeling pretty good in Knoxville too, because they got slammed by the NCAA the other day, but basically it comes down to writing a check. I mean, it just doesn't matter. And I mean, the only guy who lost that is the guy who should have lost, and that's Jeremy Pruitt, who got only a 6-year show cause.
Yeah, and there's some scholarship reduction. There's an $8 million fine, which basically amounts to a couple of bowl games. But they won't do postseason bans, and they won't punish the players that weren't there when all of this was going down. And so
that was a big deal.
Yeah, and Tennessee can move past all of this. That's what makes them dangerous to me. You can move past everything that was kind of looming during the Pruitt era. You came off a really good season last year. You've got the quarterback. You have the talent. College football, I've said this forever. College football is at its best when you have the current powers that are really good, but you add in Tennessee, you add in Miami, you add in Florida State, and you add in USC. When those 4 teams are dominant, in addition to what's out there now, is when I believe college football is at the height of its powers.
Yeah, and that's really been the problem, because a lot of these have been dormant for a long time, and I think that's why we ended up with Alabama and Clemson every year in the championship.
That'll do it for a safety version of the Matt Barrie Show on the college football show. Fine, we're going to release him out back into the wild. I'm going to go do Sports Center. Got a couple of other schools going for SEC Media Days. Paul, we'll catch up soon. Great stuff out there this week, and I'll talk to you, I don't know, in about 2-something hours on live television.
Well, if you don't see me on the set downstairs, that means that whoever killed the person behind me got me as well.
And oh, by the way, those questions I just ended this with, those are the exact same questions I'm asking you on Sports Center, so you're going to be ready to go.
I can't wait. Thanks, Matt.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.